1 in 5 of my colleagues sits here in India. We had a blockbuster year last year, third best year in our history. Our business in India has grown strongly with the market.
What would you say are the challenges that you face in the logistics business?
It is a very fragmented market as well, and that brings with it its own complexities. You mentioned the GST. There is a sort of 6% increased cost of logistics spend. They're obviously looking to catch up. We've been here since our first vessel called 1921.
Where do you stand now? Do you want to accelerate it? What kind of customers are you getting? How does this business grow? We are in conversation today with Chris Cook, Maersk's Managing Director for India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. We'll cover a host of topics today, primarily Maersk's position in India, what the Indian market means to the company, and how Chris sees both in the next 3 to 5 years. Chris, very warm welcome to this very special corner of his conversation of the Morning Brief.
Thank you, Anirban, for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure, Chris. How have the last 5 months been? You've been appointed as the head of the India business as well as Bangladesh and Sri Lanka on October 1st, if I'm not mistaken. How has it been?
Well, Anirban, it's been a whirlwind, I have to say. Moving from the UAE, where I was based for the last 6 years, adapting to the country and, getting into our customers and learning about our business here. And I must say, being very warmly welcomed by the people of India. I must say, I've moved around a lot in my career, and I've been extremely warmly welcomed. And I think that makes life a lot easier when you're settling in a new place. But business is good. Business is growing. The growth opportunity that India represents and projects to the world, I'm being able to very much see that up close and personal, and I look forward to sharing some more about that in the coming questions.
Your previous stint, as you sort of said, was as head of Maersk, managing director of Maersk for UAE, Oman and Qatar. But even in that role, you had a firm eye on what was happening in India and the Indian business. Tell me, if we sort of add those two stints in terms of your perception of the Indian market and how well Maersk is positioned and what India means for Maersk, what are the 3 ways you would say it has changed or evolved in the last 5 years?
So you're right. I mean, India was always an important part of the business that I ran in the UAE. A lot of trade between the two economies. I think the major shift that happened was when the trade agreement, the CEPA trade agreement happened
Exactly.
2 years ago. And I think that's where we really started to see an accelerated, as companies on both sides were investing in each other. And that's where we really started to see an acceleration in the trade between the two countries, whether it was in oil-based products, whether it's in food-based products from India, and other retail, the handicraft business. A lot of the retail chains in the UAE are buying from India. So we really see all that acceleration as COVID started to come down. That trade agreement was signed, and then we started to see an acceleration in the trade between the two countries as it became easier and easier for the countries to trade.
Right. Let's come straight to the Indian business and let's talk a few numbers. Now, 2024 was a sort of a blockbuster year for Maersk. It was, in fact, the third best year in the history of Maersk as far as earnings are concerned. And you obviously didn't think it would be, given the geopolitical and other issues. But then, of course, you did phenomenally well. Maersk's global revenue was at, if I'm not mistaken, $55.5 billion.
Yes.
Now, analysts tell us, and this is the first question I want to ask you on this, that India accounts now for about 8% of Maersk's global revenue. The largest chunk of it is, of course, your ocean trade, which is followed by logistics, followed by terminals. Could you confirm that for me?
So you're absolutely right. We had a blockbuster year last year, third best year in our history. And of course, some of that was driven by the strong ocean market, where we saw the Red Sea closed, and that of course reduced capacity in the market and meant that all of the major ocean liners were sailing around the Cape of Good Hope. and a stronger demand than we anticipated.
Absolutely.
Now, when we look at our growth, we tend to look at we don't tend to publish our results at a country level basis, but certainly we can say that our business in India has grown strongly with the market, and we also believe that in the coming year we will continue that growth, and we've made investments to ensure that we are able to deliver capacity to the market. If I talk about my ocean business or on my land side, my warehousing and transportation business, that we're able to support that kind of growth with the investments that we have. So answering your question in a bit more of a roundabout way, I'm trying to give you a sense that yes, we've grown with the market, and yes, we're building capacity to continue growing with the market.
But 8% compared to, say, I mean, this is never a great comparison, but I'll make it nevertheless because people keep comparing India and China, and I believe China accounts for a fifth. So, if not catching up, do you see this gap narrowing in terms of how much India accounts for your global business? So what I mean is, do you see it going up from 8% in the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah, and China is often used as a reference point, but people often forget that India's services sector accounts for more than 50% of the GDP in the country, and that's not the case in China. China's growth story has come a lot more from export manufacturing. So I certainly believe that we will see more businesses. We've already seen it happen in the last couple of years as countries start to de-risk their supply chains and have China plus one strategies. And we've seen, double-digit growth with a number of different sectors. And so my belief is that 8%, of course, will expand as more businesses invest, whether they're, supporting Make in India or just selling to the domestic market. So I certainly believe that it'll come. And I won't have done my job, I guess, if we if we don't at least aspire to deliver more than that to the business.
No, of course. But do you see the split also changing a little bit? Now it's sort of disproportionately skewed towards ocean, which I believe is more than 80% of your India business right now, and followed by logistics. So especially on logistics, and I'll come to probably terminals later, but especially on logistics, do you see a growth in the chunk?
Exactly. I mean, if I look at the business back over the last 5 years, we can already see that expansion of the contribution that brings to the business, the bottom line that it brings to the business. And, part of our integrator offering is that we will bring end-to-end solutions. So we believe that the logistics business will bring a higher contribution to the overall business. Our ocean business is highly cyclical, and we've seen that 2023. We saw that sharp downturn, our largest downturn year on year in history, also from a COVID peak to a more normalized market. And if you look at the logistics business, then you will also see a difference in the contribution. So yes, I would. We will see that logistics business starting to balance towards make a higher contribution versus the ocean business.
I saw some really interesting numbers in your annual report. That's the Maersk's global annual report. So when you look at geographical splits from countries, from markets, India revenue is seen to be $1.4 billion in 2023, and it declined to 1.2 billion. Now, the disclaimer given at the bottom of the note was that this is only counted for ports of discharge. So I would assume that this is only your import numbers, right? So it seems that your import numbers have declined, but import numbers in India have increased and exports have declined. So sort of how are you managing that, and how have your overall revenues, have they grown? And if so, how? Because import numbers seem to have declined.
Yeah. So overall, our revenue numbers, obviously, as you pointed, we had this record year in 2024, and what we, the way in which where the freight is paid is often one of the drivers of how those revenue numbers are driven. So if your international business expands, i.e. freight paid overseas, then although it may look at a country level, the number's gone down, the total activity has gone up. And that's exactly what's happened here. So our large retail businesses, if you think about the North American retailers or the European businesses, they've grown very robustly. We saw a 12% growth in our retail business year on year, 23 to 24. All of those businesses are internationally owned businesses. So you would see the growth in those markets in relative terms. So I think that answers the question.
But has India business grown as well?
Yes,
not in chunk, but in absolute terms.
Exactly. So if I look at my volume, if I purely look at the volumetrics, then my exports and imports both have lifted year over year. So
in India.
In India.
Oh,
yes.
okay. That's interesting.
So as I say, the point is where the freight is paid, which may drive this year-on-year adjustment you allude to.
Right.
And so if a higher proportion of overseas paid, then that might drive down what looks like India-based revenue, although in the total picture, that revenue's there, yeah.
Understood. But did you see, so a big surprise for internally also for Maersk, which is why your guidance changed from a loss to profit mid-year, was that even though there was a hike in freight rates, you saw that there was tremendous demand for absorbing those freight rates, right?
Yes.
Did you see a similar kind of demand among your Indian consumers as well?
Yes,
for higher freight rates.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we, when we gave our outlook at the beginning of 2024, a very large order book was arriving. So that means new ships coming into the market, and that meant that we anticipated there will be oversupply of vessels. Obviously, the closure of the Red Sea meant that ships had to sail around Cape of Good Hope. That's a 2-week longer transit time, and that absorbed a lot of that additional capacity. In fact, more than absorbed the demand. And at the same time, where we anticipated a slower market, the market actually held strong. At the beginning of 2024, there was a lot of discussion, would North America slow down? It didn't slow down. Would Europe slow down into more of a recession? It didn't, to the degree that it was thought. So all of that played up, and in our domestic market also we saw strong demand for our exports, at least from the country. Yeah.
Are you profitable in India right now?
We are profitable in India, yes.
And are your profits growing?
And our profits are growing, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Would you be able to give me a number?
No, we don't. As I mentioned this.
We never stop trying.
I know. I can see that you're persistent for sure. But no, we don't give a breakdown at a country level.
Okay. And coming to your logistics business, I mean, I wanted to ask you if all three of your services, managed, transported, fulfilled by Maersk, are all three segments currently present in India, and how do you plan to grow each? Because you're some two of them at least have done very well. Fulfilled, I think globally there's a bit of a hiccup in terms of margins, etc. But the other two have done very well. How about India?
Yes, so we have all three of those offerings available in the market. In fact, in the Fulfilled by Maersk, which for your listeners is our contract logistics business predominantly, and our middle mile business, we've grown in the last 3 years from a very modest sized business to being in the top 10 contract logistics players measured by footprint. So that's very present. Our managed by, which is the lead logistics offerings, that's a very core part of the business that we're offering. And the transported by, which is air freight, LCL, inland transportation, a very core part of the business and growing, often linked to our ocean business. So also all three are very established, I would say, and growing in a healthy way.
What would you say are the challenges that you face in the logistics business? Because there are many. It's a part of it is highly unorganized. There's a huge GST segment which companies have been really grappling with throughout. What do you say are the pain points and how are you sort of working around them? And also, do we see tie-ups happening this year in the logistics space for Maersk?
Yeah. So as you allude to, I mean, the infrastructure, of course, is being built around us as we see, the transportation infrastructure is being built around us. It is a very fragmented market as well, and that brings with it its own complexities. You mentioned the GST topic as well. So I think the local knowledge that we have in the different markets that we sit in is definitely something that we believe gives us strength to be able to still win in that, despite those headwinds, if you like. I think the fact that we are distributed across the country, we were more than 20,000 employees across.
That's a huge chunk of your global employees, right?
Exactly. One in five of my colleagues sits here in India, and I think that presence and that footprint gives us an immense ability to be agile in the market, in spite of, if you like, some of the challenges. The cost of logistics here, 14%. A good, or let's say a mature market might aim for around 8%. So there is a sort of 6% increased cost of logistics spend here, which we are, that's part of my job to my customers to help them solve that. But it's also, something that we have to deal with as a provider and help, navigate through those things.
Very interesting thought by Vincent in the latest earnings call, where he said that, he was asked, what are you doing with so much cash? Why haven't we seen Maersk sort of acquiring? Where are the acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera? He said that we will acquire when there is proof enough of, our tech demand, et cetera, aligning with our vision. And where we will do the acquisition is, number one, terminals. The other would be logistics. So terminals we'll keep aside because that's a completely separate business. But logistics, do you see some kind of, acquisitions, et cetera, happening at least in the next 1 year or in the next 1 or 2 years?
So I'll just start with a little bit of history before I answer the question. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've made a number of acquisitions in contract logistics businesses, in air freight businesses, and in e-commerce and in e-commerce businesses.
You're talking globally, of course.
Globally. Now, a number of those acquisitions, at least 2 of them, impacted our business. Impacted as in they had operations based here. We bought a German air freight forwarding business which had operations here.
Which one was it, sir?
That was called Senator.
Right.
And then we bought a business called LF Logistics, and they had a contract logistics footprint. So those were gave us some scale in the market as well. Right. Our CEO's comment there was more around how do we make sure we fully integrate those businesses and leverage the opportunity that they gave us before further expanding. Our position in India is that we look to continue growing organically. There's a lot of opportunity for that. We've already talked about, we have the full product suite available. We've got a very large customer base which we can talk to and understand their needs from. So I think we'll look at our expansion, at least as far as I see at the moment, in an organic way, before any sort of M&A type of activity that might go on globally. Of course, that might be a different picture, but in my direct scope, that's how we're looking at this.
So, but on that, one of Maersk's critiques, or critiques on Maersk, if I may, is that globally and in India, their rivals have sort of stolen a march as far as expansion is concerned, and I'm talking inorganic expansion. So some sort of examples here. Lots of M&A activity has happened in the Indian shipping market in the last few years. So MSC, for instance, bought almost half of the Adani Ennore container. Hapag-Lloyd invested in JM Baxi. We had Seva Logistics, which bought a stake in Stellar Value Chain. Many analysts have said that, Maersk has sort of been too controlled, too cautious, and has been sort of left behind, and it should really take some steps to sort of make some acquisitions in India. What do you say to that?
What I say to that is, when you look at the Maersk footprint already in India, we have 2 of the larger terminal concessions on the west coast, in Pipavav and in Mumbai.
Right.
We have a technology center. We have 4 global service centers. That's plus the logistics organization of 20,000 colleagues. We're moving 7,000 rail moves a week. We've got the 7th largest warehousing footprint. We're already in the market. My competitors, and I don't compare myself to competitors, but they're obviously looking to catch up. We've been here since our first vessel call, 1921, over 100 years. So I would say that we've built a very wide base. We believe that we've got the ability to grow organically and strengthen our business based on that organic growth. And of course, if inorganic opportunities come forward, of course, we'll assess them. But I think we believe that the baseline that we have gives us that strength to move. And we've always said that our growth in the ocean footprint needs to be in service of our customers, not in service of market share, which is, perhaps some of my competitors believe in growing them in market share.
Globally too.
Global, exactly. And therefore we've taken a decision that, what we believe will bring most value to our customers is a reliability which will be unrivaled. That's the new network that we've just announced and launched a little bit over 3.5 weeks ago, which will that's the Gemini network, which will ultimately deliver 90% reliability in a market today where the average, or rather the best performer, which is also Maersk, sits around 55-60%. So 1 in 2 ships arrives on time. That's the best performer. We're promising a 90% reliability. So we're going to be almost twice as reliable as our competitors by the time we complete the rollout of our network. And I think these are the ways in which we believe that we're bringing value to the Indian market and our customers, rather than just being big for the sake of being big.
Right. Talk to me about Gemini. It's a huge step, right? And in fact, Vincent in the call that I referred to called it the greatest innovation in this space in the last, I think, 10 years.
Yes.
Surely, such a big overhaul would have some kind of an impact on the Indian market or on the Indian network.
Yes.
What would that be?
Yeah. So the major adjustment that it brings for the Indian market, for Maersk in India, is that we've expanded our capacity into the European market. Key growth segments for any exporters, the Make in India and the production-led incentives, which are driving the manufacturing sector and driving exports. We're facilitating that with this expanded capacity. And in addition to that, we're also reducing our lead time into North America. The collection of those three is a 4 to 5% additional capacity that we're going to bring on those corridors into North America and Europe.
Okay, and in terms of, is there a number in terms of cost efficiency that you can share with me? That'll, you aim about $500 million of savings for the entire year.
Yes.
But for India, what would it be in percentage terms? Just something for our viewers to understand.
I don't have that number. I mean, what we've said is we aim to achieve, in the second half, half of that number by the time we're fully integrated. So, I'll let our viewers do their own math, or your viewers do their own maths on what that may be. I don't have a specific number for
Sure. Okay. 2 businesses, 2 questions. First, on ship repair and shipbuilding.
Yeah.
You have a partnership with Alang Shipyard between 2017 and 2024, and I'm quoting from one of your publications, perhaps your annual report or your corporate presentation. Maersk has recycled 17 ships at the Alang Shipyard. Where do you stand now? Do you want to accelerate it? What kind of customers are you getting? How does this business grow?
Yeah.
And what kind of potential do you see in this business?
So just to give a bit of a important bit of context on the ship recycling part, the traditional method for recycling vessels has been extremely filled with unsafe practices, and which could be pollution, it could be an exploitation of people, and bad for the destructive to the environment. And one of the things we did when we partnered in Alang, where we've made these investments, is to clean up those processes. And at the beginning, it was very hard for people to really understand. People just thought, well, why are Maersk putting their vessels on the beaches to be cut up and recycled. You probably remember yourself.
I do. I remember those conversations, yes.
But actually what we were addressing was this bigger problem of there was not a clean process for the recycling of these ships. So as you mentioned, 17 ships now successfully recycled, and what we're trying to drive is that we will, recycle more vessels here as we build scale, and as we see that, the standards that we want to put in place, which mean that, there's not child labor in place, there's proper recycling of the materials, that we minimize any impact on the environment. So all of those are in place, and that's where we see the growth in the segment. And then in terms of shipbuilding, India has a long maritime heritage. 40% of Maersk seafarers are from India. But its shipbuilding is actually really in a very limited stage at the moment. Even in sort of recreational craft, it's not a large sector. So we've signed up to explore that possibility of shipbuilding, and in the interim working on ship repairs with our recent MOU that we've just signed.
You mean the MOU with Cochin Shipyard?
Exactly.
So that was actually my next question. It's not just ship repair, but also maintenance and building activities.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the scope of that MOU. Of course, outside of what has already been reported or what you've announced, if you could give me some more color on, how do you plan to expand on that? Why choose Cochin Shipyard, of course? Are you planning to how much are you planning to invest? Are you planning new facilities? Do you have internal targets, etc.? Give me some bit of where that MOU will be headed in the next 2 years. Yes.
So of course at this stage it's an MOU. So it's a lot of what we want to do is get into that exploratory phase. We as I mentioned, the industry is still, I suppose, has been very underinvested, and in the budget that was announced a few weeks ago, of course there's a number of stimulus in that which will, we hope, lift the capabilities of the sector. So, one of the things we want to do is explore the repair capabilities, and obviously that builds competence. And then alongside that, so that will be actual activity that we'll bring in, and then alongside that, we also want to bring some exploratory work around physical shipbuilding, and as I point out earlier, that's something that doesn't happen at scale, at least in container shipping today. So that's what we want to understand, and there's a lot of parts of that,
But do you find the environment favorable for that, the taxes, etc.?
And that's that'll be all the things that we'll explore in this piece of the study that we're gonna carry out. And of course, it has to make economic sense for us to pursue. But you can see the intent of the government in their budget, with the tonnage tax that they're putting in place and various other announcements that they've made, which and then we have to see that actually stacks up when we go and look at could we invest in shipbuilding.
Maersk has a huge sustainability effort chapter in its story. Fleet renewal, fuel, electrification program across your ports. I know of some sort of solar infrastructure that is being commissioned at one of the terminals that you have, I think GTI.
Yes.
Net zero by 2040, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What part does India play?
A very important part. Let me put it that way. And you already alluded to the Gateway Terminal in Mumbai, which is putting in a number of renewable initiatives. Also, my depot infrastructure by the end of March will have solar panels across all of their sites, which will power those sites. All of that is building towards delivering net zero by 2040. This week we mark a major milestone with the vessel naming of our first vessel naming in India of one of our e-methanol vessels. This is a major milestone for us. It's the transition into sustainable fuels away from traditional fossil fuels. We're looking at our transportation infrastructure as well, how we will electrify that. As you mentioned, we announced a couple of years ago that we put in place a number of electric vehicles. We continue to trial that.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the plan, yeah.
And we've got a plan to expand that, particularly in the larger size vehicles. So it's a core part of what we believe we need. Our customers want. I mean, that was the most, at the start point. First of all, as a business, we believe is the right thing to do. It's also what our customers are telling us they want, and our customers in India in particular are adopting this more and more sustainable or looking for sustainable options for their transportation. So that's what we're building ourselves towards, so we can meet that net zero by 2040.
Right. Chris Cook, thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.